The language prison. Close your eyes and try to imagine a color you've never seen before. Not a shade of existing colors. A completely new color. One that doesn't exist anywhere in your experience. Can you do it? No, you can't. Your brain literally cannot generate that image because you don't have a word for it. Now, here's the disturbing question. How many concepts are you trying to think right now but can't? How many ideas exist just beyond the edge of your vocabulary, forever out of reach? What if your language isn't a tool for expressing thought, but a cage that limits what you can think? This is Uncomfortable Theories. I'm your host, Janet Robinson. Act 1. The Missing Blue. Let me tell you about a color that didn't exist. In Homer's Odyssey, written around 800 BCE, the sea is described as wine dark. The sky is compared to bronze. Sheep are violet. Honey is green. But blue? Blue is never mentioned. Not once. And it's not just Homer. Ancient Greek texts, ancient Chinese texts, Icelandic sagas, ancient Hindu Vedas, none of them mention the color blue. They had words for black, white, red, yellow. But the sky and the ocean were just described as light or dark. It's not that ancient peoples couldn't see blue. Their eyes worked exactly like ours. But without a word for it, they couldn't distinguish it as a separate category. Linguist Guy Deutscher tracked the emergence of color words across cultures and found a consistent pattern. Every language develops color terms in roughly the same order. Black and white first, then red, then yellow and green. Blue comes late, sometimes very late. The ancient Egyptians were the first culture to create a blue pigment. Shortly after, the word for blue appeared in their language, as if creating the color allowed them to finally see it as distinct. This is the foundation of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, linguistic relativity, the theory that language doesn't just describe reality, it shapes what reality you're capable of perceiving. Edward Sapir and his student Benjamin Lee Whorf proposed that the structure of your language fundamentally influences how you think. And if your language doesn't have a word for something, you can't fully conceptualize it. Act 2. The Himba Experiment. In the early 2000s, researchers traveled to Namibia to study the Himba tribe. The Himba language has only 5 basic color terms, compared to English's 11. But here's what makes it fascinating. One of their color words, buru, encompasses what English speakers call both blue and green. They don't distinguish between them. Meanwhile, they have multiple words for different shades of green that English lumps together under one term. Researchers showed Himba participants a circle of 12 colored squares, 11 green, 1 blue. For English speakers, the blue square jumps out immediately. It's obviously different. The Himba struggled. Some couldn't identify which square was different at all. Those who could took significantly longer and made more errors. But when shown a circle with 11 squares of one shade of green and one slightly different shade of green, a difference so subtle that English speakers barely noticed it, the Himba identified it instantly. Their language had given them heightened sensitivity to green distinctions while making blue-green differences nearly invisible. The researchers tested Himba children longitudinally as they learned color terms. And the results were staggering. Children only developed categorical perception of colors after they learned the words for them. Language wasn't describing what they saw. Language was creating what they could see. Act 3. The navigation paradox. But it gets more profound. Let me tell you about the Gugu Yimithirr people of Australia and similar Aboriginal groups. Their languages don't have words for left and right. Instead, they use cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, for everything. An English speaker might say, the cup is to your right. A Gugu Yimithirr speaker would say, the cup is west of you. This seems like a trivial difference. It's not. Because using cardinal directions for everything means your brain must maintain constant awareness of your orientation relative to the entire planet. Always. Every moment. Studies by linguist Stephen Levinson at the Max Planck Institute found that Aboriginal children as young as 5 can point directly north without hesitation in unfamiliar locations, indoors with no visual cues. English-speaking adults get disoriented in unfamiliar buildings. We lose track of which way is north within minutes of entering an office or shopping mall. It's not that Aboriginal people have better innate navigation skills. Their language forces their brains to develop completely different spatial processing. English trains your brain to process space relative to your own body. Aboriginal languages train your brain to process space relative to the planet. Two fundamentally different ways of experiencing physical reality, determined entirely by the language you speak. Fact 4. The Inuit Ice Vocabulary. Then there's the famous example of Inuit languages and snow. The popular version says, Inuits have 50 words for snow. The reality is both more complex and more disturbing. Inuit and Yupik languages don't have 50 words for snow as distinct vocabulary items. Instead, they have complex morphological systems that allow them to create highly specific descriptive terms for different snow conditions. Kanik, falling snow. Pukak, crystalline snow. Anu, packed snow for drinking water. Siku, sea ice. And dozens more specific terms for textures, densities, and conditions. Meanwhile, English speakers lump it all together as snow or ice because we don't need fine distinctions. And here's the critical point. When something matters to survival, language expands to create those distinctions. And once the language creates those categories, speakers perceive them as genuinely different things, rather than variations of the same thing. For Inuit speakers, different types of snow aren't just descriptively different, they're categorically different. As different as red and blue are to English speakers. But to English speakers, it's all just snow. Which raises the terrifying question. What critical distinctions are we missing because English doesn't have the vocabulary? What problems can't we solve because we literally cannot think the thoughts required to solve them? Fact 5. The cognitive prison. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis comes in two forms, weak and strong. The weak form says language influences thought. Most linguists accept this. The evidence is overwhelming. The strong form, linguistic determinism, says language determines thought. That without the words, the thoughts literally cannot exist. Most modern linguists reject the strong form, but the distinction might be meaningless. If language limits what you can easily think, does it matter whether it's technically possible to think it with great effort? In practice, you won't. Consider abstract concepts that have no English equivalent. Mamalapanadapai, Yagan language. A look shared between two people when both want something to happen, but neither will initiate it. Saudade, Portuguese. A profound nostalgic longing for something that may never return. Schadenfreude, German. Pleasure derived from another's misfortune. English speakers can describe these concepts now that we've borrowed the words. But before we borrowed them, did we fully recognize these specific emotional states? Or did we just vaguely lump them with other feelings? The terrifying implication is that there might be entire categories of thought, emotion, and perception that English speakers are blind to, simply because our language doesn't create those categories. You are trapped inside your native language's conceptual framework. And you can never fully escape it because you cannot think about what you cannot think about. Fact 6. The unknown unknowns. Now, here's where it gets truly disturbing. If language creates the boundaries of thought, what concepts might exist that no human language captures? Maybe there are emotions we've never felt, perceptions we've never noticed, logical structures we've never recognized. Maybe there are solutions to climate change, to poverty, to human suffering that require conceptual frameworks no existing language supports. And we'll never find them because we literally cannot think them. Worse, if an advanced alien civilization tried to communicate with us, and their language was built on fundamentally different conceptual categories than any human language, we might not even recognize their transmissions as communication. It would be like showing that blue square to a Himba speaker. They see it. The light enters their eyes, but their brain cannot parse it as meaningfully different. We could be surrounded by concepts, by ideas, by entire frameworks of understanding that we're completely blind to. Not because we're stupid, but because English, or any human language, simply doesn't provide the mental categories to recognize them. You're in a prison. The bars are made of words, and you cannot see the bars because you don't have the language to describe them. Conclusion. So, what do you do with this knowledge? Learn more languages. Each one gives you access to conceptual categories the others don't provide. Bilingual people literally think differently in each language. Pay attention to the moments when you struggle to articulate something. That struggle isn't clumsiness. It's the edge of your conceptual prison. You're bumping against the walls. And maybe, just maybe, we create new words for concepts we discover we're missing. Expand the language, expand the prison. But understand, you will never fully escape. Because the language you're using to think about escaping language is itself the cage. This has been Uncomfortable Theories. I've been your host, Janet Robinson. Question everything. Trust nothing. And remember, if you can't say it, you can't think it. And if you can't think it, it doesn't exist.